news. First, we'll talk about the gaming stuff. So, the UK has officially blocked the Microsoft Activision deal to preserve innovation in cloud gaming. So, I went on the r/games subreddit, and everyone was just clowning the fucking cloud gaming part because that shit is just hilarious. Because we all know, as gamers ourselves, that the cloud gaming scene and the sort of part of that industry is sort of never really awoken, never really taken off in any real major regard, but I do think that the sentiment to preserve competition and everything like that is there. I think that is like a valid argument, because when you have Microsoft, one of the biggest tech giants on the planet, taking up Activision, who has a lot of really huge IPs like Call of Duty and stuff like that, you are sort of taking that part of the industry and sort of, they can gatekeep it away from other people, but at the same time, they can also, play nice and be fair, which is something that they've been doing, fairly. But at the same time, it's like, can you really trust them with that kind of power at the same time? So we don't know exactly where this deal is going to head now, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Microsoft is just kind of taking L's like this week, and this doesn't really help at all either. Yeah, the cloud gaming thing is a little weird. I guess it's like, they like expect it to be a bigger deal in the future, and like Microsoft already has a pretty good foothold in that sort of
Mm-hmm.
space. So maybe if cloud gaming really got big in the future, they would have that whole market sort of like cornered. And then with Activision being acquired, then I guess they'll fear it'd be like too much of a monopoly at that point. But I do feel that's kind of like that's a lot of like forward thinking. So I'm not too sure if cloud gaming will really pop off that soon. I think we're still ways off from that even like being a thing that would be concerning for in terms of like actual market competition, because a lot of gamers don't really care about this stuff. Like it's like, yeah, it just doesn't work. You have to have a wired connection, and a lot of people don't have that or don't even know what a wired connection is. So I don't think they should really be concerned about that. But again, I guess it does make sense how, if they do get Activision, Microsoft is very bigger than Nintendo or Sony in terms of like just overall company size, because, Windows. So it makes sense that they don't want them to have like sort of a big like market in the gaming space, because I guess it would be kind of unbeatable at that point. And it's kind of hard to imagine just because Sony and Nintendo are like a lot more prevalent than Microsoft is at this point. But maybe they just fear that if they do give them this one edge, it'll just be too much, and then it'll just snowball out of control. Again, I'm no businessman. Like, I don't really know how big the ramifications is, but like that's kind of their job. But all I know is that Microsoft needs something, and clearly this wasn't the play, since they are getting blocked by literally everyone. So it just has not been their day, as we'll talk about soon with Redfall. So honestly, I think the thing that Microsoft really has to do is just make new IPs and stuff. Like, I know they keep buying studios and stuff, but they don't really own that IP. Like, Sony and Nintendo have been building the IP since like, the N64 PS1 days, and Microsoft has, they had Halo and had Gears, and like that's about it. So it really, I don't know. They really have to just do something, because they are definitely losing this gen, just like they did last generation, where I really don't hear anyone talking about Xbox like at all. So yeah.
I mean, while we're on the topic of Microsoft, we might as well bring up the point that Phil Spencer went on the Kind of Funny Games cast and sort of opened up about the Redfall launch and how he is upset with himself, as he said, "I'm upset with myself," that end quote. It just seems like that they are trying their best to actually make a new forge into the industry in a way, because for the longest time it was Halo and Gears of War. And when those IPs and franchises really ran their course and shooters sort of took the backseat, now it's like, all right, what do we have to fall back on? All of these IPs that we kind of ditched, like Fable and shit like that. It's like, well, we could try to revive them, but at this point, people don't really care about that stuff anymore. So I think that, and no offense to those people that like Fable and all of those other IPs, I'm sure you would have a field day as much as I would if I saw Sly Cooper come back for the PlayStation. But anyways, like you said, Damian, I think that it is a thing for Microsoft to really buckle down and create new IPs that can really solidified themselves with Microsoft and really aligned themselves with Xbox and everything like that. Because, you know, when you look at PlayStation and Nintendo especially, you know, Nintendo has been running Mario and Zelda into the ground for years and years and years, and it works. You know, obviously, like the success of the Mario movie and now with Tears of the Kingdom now out, it's like, okay, yeah, these IPs are still doing well because obviously they take the time and effort to create those games and create those projects, et cetera, et cetera. With PlayStation, you know, they have like a lot of really good studios that really know what they're doing. But at the same time, PlayStation is sort of falling into their own rabbit hole of like, all right, everything has to be open world, everything has to be story driven, et cetera, et cetera. And that can get really boring and tiresome for a lot of people. And it's getting boring and tiresome for me personally because, you know, I haven't played Forbidden West. And I know it's really good, but I'm kind of like daunted to really play that because I'm just like, I know it's going to be a really long game. It's going to be open world. It's going to be a story that I do care about, but not necessarily, you know, so it's like, you know, what variety does PlayStation have? It's not a whole lot in all things considered. And then when you look at Xbox, it's like the running joke in the entire industry for years has been like Xbox has no games, which is true. Like it's like they don't have a lot of games to really draw people into the Xbox console. And I know it's because, you know, Phil Spencer and the Xbox team want to play nice and be like, yeah, you know, it's available on Windows too at the same time. And it's like, all right, yeah, that's cool. But it's like, what's going to have people going out to the store to buy Xboxes other than that their friends have it? And even then, crossplay is now becoming such a more integrated thing into like every single game. It's like, do I really even need a Xbox anymore? Which is why like when me and Emma play Fortnite, it's like, why is this kid playing on Xbox? Is this all he has? Like the fucking Xbox has no fucking games. That's why he's playing Fortnite and he's fucking level like 200 or whatever, you know? Right. So I think that with Redfall, especially with Redfall, because this was like their next biggest game and the sort of news of the whole 30 FPS at launch and 60 FPS later, it just sort of tainted the whole game before it even came out. Like it literally shut the game down before it came out. And then when it did come out, all of the reviewers and the critics came out and was like, yeah, it's like not that great. And like that sucks too. You know, at least if they had like that 60 FPS thing, I think that wouldn't have had such a negative press around it before it came out, and then the reviews came out, and then instantly the game's done.
Yeah. Like it really just shows that the most important thing for like a console is like games. Mm-hmm. So if you don't have that, it doesn't really matter. Like you could be the most strongest system in the world, but if you have like no video games, it doesn't really matter. I mean, look at the Switch. I mean, I wish it was stronger. Like, you know, I wish that thing wasn't like a toaster, but you know, like I still think the Switch is probably one of the strongest consoles like in a while. Like I think it's my favorite Nintendo console at this point. Like it has so many good games, and you know the fact that it runs like shit, but like people still like buy these games and they're like really good. Mm-hmm. You know, speaks to say like, yeah, like games are the thing that really matters for these like consoles. And you know, Sony is the same way. It's like, yeah, like. Yeah, obviously the PS5 is like a really cool console and it runs things really well. But I also bought it because like of the exclusives and stuff. Because you know games are what sell that system. Like the reason I don't have an Xbox is like there's no reason to have one. Mm-hmm. Like you know I have a PC already and I could just like play a lot of the Microsoft exclusives there. So there's like no real reason for me to get an Xbox. And I feel like a lot of people feel the same way about it. So yeah, and you know, with Redfall coming out in just such a bad state, like I've seen the reviews for it, like that game is just a mess. Like I don't know what happened, but yeah, Arcane just feel like that just wasn't the game they wanted to make. So, and I feel like in trying to sort of like broaden the appeal of that game, they kind of just appealed to no one, and it kind of just ended up being a broken mess, which is very unfortunate. So, yeah, honestly, I just think Microsoft is just gonna have to step it up with. Well, Starfield is the only other game that's coming out this year for them. So, and knowing Bethesda, that game's gonna run like ass when it comes out. So, yeah, I'm not really having. I'm sure the game's gonna be good, but like, yeah, in terms of like technical performance, like it's Bethesda, so expect it to not run like super well and be really buggy. So, yeah.
Yeah, it is honestly really crazy, and I wouldn't be surprised if like. You know, they're never going to release these numbers, but I wouldn't be surprised if like Xbox has not been profitable in like the past like decade or whatever, because like they aren't really, you know, they're obviously being very friendly and, you know, they're being very open to the gaming community, being like, hey, you know, like all of our games are going to be on Game Pass, and, you know, Game Pass is successful, and, you know, all of the games on Game Pass, you know, they're also on PC, et cetera, et cetera. You know, they're being very open to the gaming community, but at the same time, it's like you're hurting yourself in the long run, especially within a capitalist society where it's like, all right, shit, you know, you kind of need to like create these advantages for yourself. And like, you know, PlayStation's been doing it for fucking years. You know, the fact that they got like the Final Fantasy stuff, like exclusives or whatever, you know, with the whole 7 remake and shit like that. And then on top of that with, you know, Square Enix with the whole Spider-Man DLC for Avengers to try to save that game. And, you know, that was kind of crazy. The fact that they got another Spider-Man thing exclusive to PlayStation. So I think that Xbox just has to be a little more aggressive if they want to, you know, stay within contention and sort of stay relevant within the trio space of like, you know, being Xbox, PlayStation, and Nintendo, sort of be within that conversation, because they're not necessarily going to end Xboxes, but I feel like that they may be on the way out, because once again, this is Microsoft we're fucking talking about. They are one of, if not the biggest tech giants on Earth, and it's kind of crazy that, you know, they are struggling with this whole Xbox thing now, especially when they've been in the business for well over a decade.
Yeah, I guess it really hurts them now. Like they don't have like, I guess, like a lot of Japanese support. Since it didn't really matter in the 360 days, because, you know, a lot of like Japanese studios weren't really doing so hot. But now, like, you know, they've been popping off, and like them not really getting jack and shit on Xbox, because, you know, a lot of Japanese players don't have Xboxes. Like that support's kind of hurting them a lot as well. So yeah, I just don't really hear a lot of people saying, I'm going to get an Xbox now. It's not like when we were kids. It's like, oh, I'm going to get a 360 or whatever. Like no one cares anymore. Like people just say, I want the PS5. Like that's sort of like the hot, like next gen console to get. Like I barely hear anyone talk about like the Xbox Series X. So, yeah, like Microsoft just really has to reevaluate their like games and see like, you know, just make them good. They probably need more oversight as well. Like I know Microsoft's way of dealing with like games is just to be very like give them a bunch of money, but don't really like touch their like don't give them any insight. But at this point, I really feel like they should be a little more controlling and being like, okay, can we not make this like game shit? So that'd be cool. But yeah,
it's a great way to approach it.
All right, in terms of another.